Good morning, everyone. Thank God for another day. Good morning. This is the Bible 101 class for September 19th, 2021. Let's begin with prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, God, we thank you for this opportunity you've given us, Lord, to study your word. Let that word go into our hearts that we might not sin against thee, to let our light shine, that men may see our good works and glorify you, the Father which is in heaven. Amen. Okay, we're back to the bones. We handled bone last week. We saw how that ended, and it ended with him still separated, something we don't want to be. It's separated from God in the end, and that's how it ended from Jeroboam. There was no mention of him reconciling. There was no mention of him owning up to his accountability, responsibility as a leader. And as I said, when we don't hold our leaders accountable and responsible for the authority God has given them, then the people suffer. So we have to say what's wrong. And we should do that, of course, in a Christian loving way, the same way Christ did. When they're a brood of vipers, you got to call them a brood of vipers. So it is what it is. Anyway, we're dealing with Rehoboam. And, Rehoboam was the son of Solomon, and he reigned in the southern kingdom, Judah. So we know how Jeroboam did in the northern kingdom. Let's see what Rehoboam has done in the southern kingdom in Judah. Did he get the memo? I don't think so. But let's read the verses and we'll go from there. 1 Kings 14th chapter, verse 21 through 31. And Rehoboam, the son of Solomon, reigned in Judah. Rehoboam was 41 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 17 years in Jerusalem, the city which the Lord did choose out of all the tribes of Israel to put his name there. And his mother's name was Naamah, an Ammonite. She was an Ammonite from Ammon. We know how that messed up that is, but we'll go into it later. And Judah did evil in the sight of the Lord, and they provoked him to jealousy with their sins, which they had committed, above all that their fathers had done. But they also built them high places and images and groves on every high hill and under every green tree. And there were also Sodomites in the land, and they did according to all the abominations of nations which the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. And it came to pass in the 5th year of King Rehoboam that Shishak, the king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem. And he took away the treasure of the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house. And he took away all. And he took away all the shields of gold which Solomon had made. And King Rehoboam made in their stead brazen shields, and committed them into the hand of the chief of the guard, which kept the door of the king's house. And it was so, when the king went into the house of the Lord, that the guard bare them and brought them back into the guard chamber. Now the rest of the acts of Rehoboam and all that he did, are they not written in the book of Chronicles of the kings of Judah? And there was war between Rehoboam and Jeroboam all their days. And Rehoboam slept with his fathers and was buried with his fathers in the city of David. And his mother's name was Naamah the Ammonitess, and Abijam his son reigned in his stead. Now, when we look at these scriptures and you start seeing the names of parents, that's why it's important how we raise our children. We know that Rehoboam was the son of Solomon. I'm sure Solomon taught him in the ways of God. Solomon wrote, is attributed writing at least 2 books. We have Proverbs, we have Ecclesiastes, and there's another one, which is the Song of Solomon. So that's 3 that he's attributed to writing. And we know by these writings that he believed in monotheism, and he was teaching his children even though Proverbs is of Egyptian origin, it's of an African origin, it still was honored by putting it in the Word of God by Solomon, and he added his own Proverbs. Regarding Song of Solomon, we know he was poetry, and it was about the love between woman that's betrothed to a man that's betrothed to a woman. And we know Ecclesiastes is the teachings of what people consider he wrote in his older years, because he considered all that he had done and had seen all vanity. So here is Rehoboam, and he has a mother. Now, his mother's name is mentioned here for a big reason. Why? Because she was an Ammonite. She worshiped other gods. Solomon, this was what disconnected God from Solomon, was these marriages to women that would seduce him into letting them worship other gods. And Rehoboam's mother was an Ammonite, the children of Ammon. And they had 400 years. Remember the land of Canaan? God gave them 400 years to get it right. They didn't get it right. He said, he's going to send his people, and they're going to be conquering them, and that these sons of Noah would be ruling over the sons of Canaan. So all of this is prophecy long ago in Genesis, and it's come to fruition here. However, the sin that was there before is continuing, and Rehoboam is letting that happen because of his mother's influence. Like I said, names are important, especially when you see a woman's name. You usually see his father, but here he's mentioned his mom, and his mom was an Ammonite. They worship multiple gods, idol gods. So because of this, we end verse 22, Judah did what is evil. Yeah, come on, they broke the first commandment. The first commandment is what? Thou shalt have no other God before me. So here we go with Rehoboam breaking the first commandment. And I said that's the first commandment is the easiest one we break. We always set other gods before God, ourselves, whatever may be in our life, instead of putting God first. So, that's why Solomon wrote Ecclesiastes. He said it's all vanity. So here, now Naaman's name Naaman's name, his mother's name, actually means pleasant. So she pleasantly led him to evil. Now Judah did evil in the sight of the Lord, and they provoked God to jealousy. Now, what is jealousy? Jealousy, this is from the Aramaic word, a Hebrew word, konah, which is to be envious, to be jealous, and to have a zeal about what's making you envious and jealousy. So what they're bringing and provoking is what? That jealousy and anger of God for which they committed sins, which is an offense. Shataha, which is basically an offense, and it also brings in a penalty, which they had committed above all that their father. So this is a what? Inherited thing. Train up a child in the way he should go. You train up a child wrong in the way he should go, guess what? He will perish. He will not come back. And Rehoboam wasn't coming back. For they also built what? High places. We see the same sins that Jeroboam had committed. Here, Rehoboam is doing the same sins, making these high places and groves and images to idol gods. And of course, they focused on nature, and Asherah, of course, was a goddess, and she was the earth, and the other god, I forgot his name, but he was the sky, and if it rains on the earth, it was considered sexual relationship, just all kind of wrongdoing. And here is people, Israel name means God rules his people, and they're not being any loyalty. There's no loyalty to that at all, as they're not only committing sins, they're worshiping idol gods, and they're worshiping gods that do nothing and is taking all the glory for what God created. In the beginning, God created what? Heaven and earth. So if there's any glory to anything that's on the earth, anything that's in the sky, should be given to our Father who are in heaven, not to false gods who in the groves and the fields and the clouds in the sky. So now there was also Sodomites, and we know what this is: male prostitution, and everybody's, well, we can't say this, we can't say that. And I said, well, it's America. I'm saying it's wrong. There's a positive, negative. Two positives don't work. Two negatives put together don't work. You want something to go on and on. You want the earth to be replenished. You have to have a male and a female. You have to have a positive and a negative. Two positives is just going to create nothing. And God is not a God that creates nothing. He doesn't, what he creates, it creates on itself. It creates on its own. He created man and woman, an image of himself. He created he, them, male, female, created he, him. So this comes from the Aramaic word or Hebrew word kadesh, which is not only were they doing this homosexuality and in sexual relationship, but they were also making it sacred. So they actually had a religious order of sodomy, and males would be devoted to this prostitution of having other males have sex with them. And this is an idolatry act. Why is it? Well, if you go to Romans, he'll tell you, because men start loving themselves. You're in such a strange vanity that you can't even associate your mind to loving what's opposite of you. And that's just straight lust. We know, and I put this video not made for kids. Man does not have the physical makeup to have intercourse with himself. It's not made up that way. Woman is a vessel to have intercourse with a man. Man is a vessel to have intercourse with a woman. So even people, religion, and calling it sacred of your sin. So this was going on, and it's very important because that's what we're facing today. And if we don't call it out, people will start acting as homosexuality is a religion. It's not a religion. It is a choice. Who you have sex with and how you have sex is your choice. It is not something that should be protected. It's crazy. But hey, that's where we're in. So there were Sodomites in the land, and they did according to all the abominations. All that is, and I'm just giving you the definitions of the word toeba. All that is disgusting, abhorrence, especially in idol worship. So they, like I said, they combine this homosexuality in their worship of these gods. And so it was an abomination of nations, which the Lord had cast out before. That's why I mentioned out the land of Canaan and those nations that were in there. God is always a merciful God. He gave them 400 years. That's why he sent the children of Israel down to Egypt, and he gave them 400 years to get it right, and they wouldn't get it right. So he said, all right, I'm going to send my people in the land, and they're going to conquer you. Now, it came to pass in the 5th year, God is using Shishak, king of Egypt, came up against Jerusalem. Now, notice all through the Old Testament into the history of the kings of Israel, Israel has always had a good relationship with Egypt. Now, I know they came out of Egypt, you had the 7 plagues, but immediately after that, and remember, Egyptians came out there with them. People forget that. It wasn't just, million something Hebrews coming out. It was a group of people. Even the Egyptians were coming out. So we know there was some political unrest there. So here, God is using the king of Egypt. Now, Egypt at this time, according to history, it could have been the area where the Libyan kings had came and established, or it could still be in the order. But anyway of the order, whoever took over Egypt at the time still did the policies and the priesthood that was set up in the time of Joseph. And that's why when Moses came on the scene, they said that there was a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph. And we know that Egypt is an African country, and we know that it's a country that ruled from Africa up to where present-day Iraq is, and also up to Syria. And it also, because of what happened in the Mediterranean and the volcano, the stela of Moses III, who was the first quote-unquote ruler of the world before the Roman Empire, before ever, his stela was found in Greece and Italy and parts of Spain. So the Egyptian empire was very strong, but now the Egyptian empire is becoming weak. And they also was set up under monotheism and then broke off into other gods. And we're seeing now that Egypt is used to punish Jerusalem. Now, interesting that this punishment specifically focused on the treasures of the house of the Lord. Now we get into Ethiopian history, because the Ethiopians said it was under their reigns in Egypt, so Shishak could have been under their reigns that before the fall of Jerusalem, that they came and took the Ark of the Covenant. So we know two African empires were involved with preserving the history and the treasures of Israel. That's why I said, when you study this, whoever's telling you white people taught us the Bible, that is the most asinine, ignorant thing you can say in the world, that somebody from Europe has no mention in here is brought this to you. No, you wrote it, you're in it, and you should understand what you're reading and writing and reading and understanding it, so you can have a sense of your spirituality and your relationship with God as Black people. So, said all that to say King Rehoboam made instead brazen. So this is how God works. He'll give you the best of things, but when you rebel against him, he's going to take it away. He's going to take it away. And in your vanity, you're going to try to put it back, but it's just going to be less. It's not going to be of the same quality. It's not even going to be used in the same way, because Rehoboam now made these shields of brass. This used to be shields of gold of Solomon. Now it's brass. Now we see how a relationship suffers, how a relationship degenerates from gold, which is a more precious metal, now to brass. That's what we do when we're out of relationship with God. Even though we're saying we are Christians, look at our situation today. Look at it. It's gone from gold to brass. And just like that, we take it out when we need it, and then we hide it back after we use it. We're in that state right now. The church is in that state right now. It's not gold, it's brass. And we're taking it out when we need to, and then we're bringing it back in and hiding it. That's what's going on here in verse 27. So, in verse 28. So verse 27 and 28 shows that fall of a relationship from loving God, from understanding his commitment to us through his salvation of his son, Jesus Christ, and then letting that deteriorate to a state that it's not golden anymore, it's brass, and we only bring it out when we need it, and then we hide it back in. So understand verses 27 and 28. So now we talk about all the acts of Rehoboam is in the book of Chronicles. Remember, there are 1st and 2nd Kings, and there's 1st and 2nd Chronicles. Chronicles details more of what goes on in 1st and 2nd Kings. One is more of a summary history, and the other is more of a detailed history. And there was war always. So there was always war between the northern and southern kingdom. Now, if they're constantly at war, and Egypt is constantly ruling this area, and you have the Assyrian Empire getting stronger, the Hittite Empire getting stronger, the Babylonian Empire getting stronger, eventually they're going to start going south, and there's going to be nothing to stop them from getting into where all man came from, out of Africa. So the buffer is this strip of land. That's why the Middle East is so important. That's why the land has been at war, because it's the strip. It's the way to get into Africa by land. There's no other way except by boat. So this landmass is very important. And now these two kingdoms, the northern kingdom of Israel, the southern kingdom of Judah, has been at war all the days of Rehoboam and Jeroboam's reign. So Rehoboam goes to sleep with his fathers. And again, his mother name is mentioned. His mother has so much influence in idolatry and sodomism and that type of sexual act being turned into a religious order that her name is mentioned again, and Abijam, his son, is to reign. So what do you think Abijam is about to do? He's going to be trained up as the way he shouldn't have gone. And when he's old, he's not going to depart from it. It's a mess. But I hope you enjoyed this brief overview of the Bible 101 class coming from 1 Kings 14 chapter, verses 21 through 31. Take care and have a great day and a great week.